Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Rose, your PMDD relationship expert. So I have personally been suffering with PMDD for over 15 years and spent years desperately trying to navigate my intimate relationships. So each week I will be providing women with PMDD and their partners with my signature PMDD trauma transformational tools on how to effectively navigate an intimate relationship while having PMDD. This is mainly so you can avoid the cycle of fighting with your partner or even breaking up with them every single month, so you can finally have the peaceful assurance that you can have the supportive relationship that we all desire and deserve. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. Let's get right into it with your weekly dose of PMDD relationship tools. So today I am here with my partner, Jamil, and I know a lot of the past episodes, a lot of PMDD partners have really gotten a lot of value off of not just hearing from me as a woman with PMDD, but also hearing from the partners as well. So today we're going to be talking about PMDD stories and how it affects your intimate relationship. So I know when we're in PMDD, we always have stories that we tell ourselves in our minds specifically about our PMDD partners when we're arguing, when we're disagreeing. So first, I want to say, when you believe those PMDD stories in your mind, it really holds you captive into what can become a damaging relationship if you start to believe the stories that you're telling yourself about what you think your partner's thinking is actually true. So once you assign a meaning and a reasoning behind the lies, that's what really makes it true. So I'm going to give you an example. If you believe that your PMDD partner isn't attracted to you because you're in PMDD and you're feeling like, oh, I've got bloated, I have all these symptoms, like I'm not feeling like my best, then you're going to begin to feel that way when you're around them. Whether they've stated to you or not that they are not feeling attracted to you, they're not feeling that affectionate, they're not feeling all these ways, whether your partner has said it, you tend to believe it. So what we believe, we create, especially about our PMDD partners. So how many times have you told yourself that your partner feels a certain way about you without them even mentioning it? Even if your partner denies it, you're still going to believe that it's true because you've believed that negative thought that's cemented in your mind. So today we're going to be talking specifically about contempt, and this can happen a lot when you are dealing with months and months of PMDD arguments where one person has said something, one person has said the other, and then in order to just move forward, you said, oh, I'm not going to address it. Let's just move forward and not say anything about it in your good days, because we never want to mess up our good days with our partners. So we try to not talk about what happens during our bad days, but it's one of the most poisonous ways that communication can actually ruin your relationship. And the root of it is unresolved anger that gets built up over time. So I know a lot of the times as women with PMDD, we sometimes think, oh, maybe this month I crossed the line. I said something I wasn't supposed to say, or I did something I wasn't supposed to do. And your partner doesn't really respond to it in a way that you expect. They kind of just brush it off and you think, oh, it didn't bother them that much, or they're really over it, or they kind of like go through the motions. Your PMDD partner could be having some resentment, some contempt because of what you said, because of what you did, but because they don't want to bring it out and cause another argument, they just say nothing about it. So as women with PMDD, when you're in your good days, you kind of try to black out a lot of the things that happen when you're in your bad days, and you want to just move forward. You don't want to be reminded of that other version of yourself. But if you don't address what emotions, what feelings that your partner specifically has based off of what happened when you're in PMDD, then it's going to end up negatively impacting your relationship, and it's going to affect the good days that you could potentially have. So when we talk about attempt and how it may harm your PMDD relationship, it's specifically talking about how you and your partner process anger while you are in PMDD. So I'm going to let my partner talk about this a little bit and talk about specifically, how do you feel like we process anger specifically while I'm in PMDD?
Processing anger is very mentally degrading. It puts you in a very bad place. When negative things are said that typically come out and they're very like below the belt, it has its effects, and it definitely festers for a long time, and it can easily become a growing issue over time. So when these things happen and one of us feels some type of way, being on the receiving end, it's an emotional roller coaster. So like, it really truly like keeps me on my toes, and it's like, man, am I the one? Like, am I what's going on? So I think having good mental health and wellness, being on the receiving end, plays a major role in dealing with those types of things. In the moment, it's like I can't address anything, right? That's how I feel. Like I can't address anything because it's just a constant battle. So it's almost not even worth it. And then by the time, they come out of the PMDD, like it's just festered. So especially if it happened at the beginning of PMDD, now I have, a week to 2 weeks to sit there and just think about it. And, the mind is such a powerful thing that you can create issues that, weren't really meant to be there. And it always makes me have to think, like, at the end of the day, I just have to trust that God wouldn't do this to me. You know what I'm saying? So having that trust in God, and then being having good health and wellness on a personal level can go a long way. But it takes both, at the end. Like, you can't get complacent and say, oh, well, I only have a week of good times, so let's not address that, because while that's your week of good times, that's our week. Then if we're really having good times, then we should be able to discuss things in a mature manner and come to, agreement, or come to some type of common ground, which is more important, knowing that this is not something that goes away. So if you continue to just act like, hurtful things weren't said, and then it comes, and then we get into the good part, and the next month we add another thing, and then the next month another thing, like that gets very it can build up, and the worst thing you want to do is allow something like that to build up.
And that's exactly what contempt is. Contempt is bottled up anger. Okay, so instead of your partner feeling safe enough to say that I'm angry, I'm upset, I am resentful, I feel that this is unfair, they tend to attack or undermine their partner and get really defensive. So if I say to my partner, hey, that comment that you made really upset me, like I feel some type of way about what you said to me, instead of them accepting that they took part in hurting your feelings, they say, well, what about you? What did you say? What did you do? It's always throwing the other partner under the bus, in a sense of, that's an attack. It's not just me, it's you. So it's not letting that moment where they're trying to address their anger be about their anger. It has to be a group effort. And so instead of explaining why they're upset, the partner uses the weapon of contempt. It's like, oh, well, you're saying that I did something. Well, I remember when you did something too. So it undermines the other PMDD partner indirectly, and it's causing their feelings to feel unimportant or unloved. Like they're not feeling that their emotions are validated because there's always something that the other partner has done. And we've all been in situations where we know that we're not perfect, whether you're in PMDD or you're not in PMDD. As a partner, you're not perfect. So if the response to someone sharing that something is upset to them is, well, you upset me too, then it's kind of like, okay, let that partner, that PMDD partner have their moment and just say, you know what, just take it. And I understand how painful it may be at times to just take it. It's like if someone's just coming at you and saying, you did something wrong and you don't really want to own that. You don't want to feel that. No one wants to feel that they disappointed their partner. No one wants to feel that they let them down. And it's kind of like holding a ball when you used to do the hot potato game back in the day, where as soon as you hold the ball, as soon as you get it, you hurry up and throw it to somebody else. And that's what contempt does. It kind of says, okay, I don't want to hold on to this anger and take this defensiveness. I'm going to hurry up and pass it to somebody else because it doesn't feel good. Because it never feels good for you to know that you let your partner down. So you want to hurry up and give the ball back to them and say, oh, but I'm not the only one. You let me down too. And here's why. And so now we're going into the other partner's feelings, where you have to really consolidate when your partner is coming to you and they're being open and they're being vulnerable and they're saying, this hurt me in this way. Don't make it about you. Don't make it about everything that you've bottled up with content, and say, I've been holding on to this for 40 days and 40 nights. And now that you decide to come to me and say what's bothering you, now I'm going to dump all of the things that I feel like you've done, and I'm going to dump that on you. Because then you start using harmful and critical language that makes one partner feel superior and the other partner feels invalidated. It's like, wow, I really was trying to be open and honest with you and say, hey, this is bothering me. And instead of you receiving that and saying, okay, I understand my part in this, I'm sorry that you feel that way, you have a whole bucket load of things that you can tell me that I did wrong too. So the Gottman Institute, which is one of the books that we all know, if you've been in a relationship and you try to look up relationship advice, you've heard of the 5 Love Languages by John Gottman. And that's something, I even have his journal, and I actually send a copy of the daily devotional, which I'll link in the comments of this podcast. But I have that to send to my partner every single day so that we can kind of go over, for 365 days of the year, we can kind of go over what can make our partnership better. And according to him, he said contempt is the biggest predictor of divorce. Because he said that, he says it's a negative power, a power move that's used when it makes the other person feel inferior. And so what I mean by that is, if someone is making you feel down because you made a mistake in the relationship, or down because you've not met up to their expectations, contempt is a good way of making the other partner feel like, well, I'm not as bad as you're saying I am. I'm kind of better because you did this and this and this. That's what contempt does. It holds on to all the negative actions that you've done in the past, and then it gives them all back to you at the moment where the other partner is trying to be vulnerable. So have you ever heard your partner say really critical comments, judgy comments that are like, you're never on time, what's wrong with you, while you're in PMDD? So this can specifically impact your PMDD partnership because there's so many symptoms that cause us to not be our best. And so if our partner throws that in our face and says, oh, you're forgetting something, or you're not on time, or you're just sitting around, are you being lazy, or why aren't you doing what you normally do? Like, all of these questions are very offensive, and it makes the partner feel bad about having PMDD. It's not making the person with PMDD feel safe enough to say, hey, I'm having not just a bad day, because people with PMDD, women with PMDD, we don't have bad days. We have bad weeks. So we don't feel like we can come to our partner and say, I'm having a bad 2 weeks and I'm probably not doing all of the things that I would normally do, or saying the things that I would normally say. And I need that to be okay with you. So instead of getting judged and condemned for not being at our best, we need to be able to have that safe place, because contempt is criticism from a position of superiority. It's kind of like, have you ever heard your PMDD partner say, well, I would never do that. I don't understand why you do that. Why can't you just remember, like, why didn't you handle a circumstance the way you normally do? It's kind of taking PMDD off the table and saying, I'm not going to address the fact that you're in PMDD and know that there are some limitations with that. It's like, I'm going to criticize you for all of the things that you're already criticizing yourself about. Because everyone with PMDD knows that you're consistently having negative thoughts going on in your mind, criticizing you of things that you're not able to do. And you're hard enough on yourself. And so the point of a PMDD partner is to support you, is to be that buffer and to say, it's okay. I believe that every partner, whether you have PMDD or not, should feel that it's okay to have bad days, to have bad moments, to make mistakes, to not be a subject of perfectionism. No one is perfect. And I feel like when we try to hold someone to a standard of being perfect, and then when they fail, call them out on it, that's contempt. That's saying, I'm going to criticize you for not being perfect. I'm going to criticize you for not doing what you would normally do. And so over time, this really impacts a PMDD relationship, because for 7 to 14 days out of the month, you may not be your best. And if your partner decides to criticize you and then hold on to anger for you not being your best, this is not something that is temporary. It's not something that is going to go away. So if there's months and months and months of them bringing up and criticizing all of the negative things that you're doing when you're in PMDD, then over time, this is why Gottman said this is a predictor of divorce, because it's like this partner is always going to be pointing out things that you're not doing right. And then he wasn't even talking about PMDD. He was talking about specifically bad days, because he's a relationship expert, again, with the 5 love languages, and he really goes to the core of meeting your partner's needs based off of what they specifically need, how they want to be shown love. And that's not something that we're going to be able to perfect every single time. So if someone's trying to show you love and they're in PMDD and they're not doing it the way that you normally expect, and then you in turn criticize them and say, oh, you normally do this, or you normally do that. How could I want to feel loved this way? Demanding that your PMDD partner show up perfect. And this goes both ways, not just for the women who have PMDD, but a lot of times when we're suffering, we can demand our PMDD partners to show up to us a certain way and say, hey, because I'm in PMDD, you need to do this, this, and this, and you need to do this, this, and this, putting all of these excessive expectations on our partners to make us feel better. So I truly believe that there has to be some level of accountability to take some of that pressure off of your partner, to say, you don't have to do everything in order to make me feel better. I know certain things that can make me, that can regulate my rage, that can regulate my emotions, that can regulate my negative thoughts. But that's where help comes in. And if you're not actively taking a role in getting help to regulate yourself, then how can you expect your partner to regulate themselves when you lash out because of PMDD rage, or when you start to think these negative thoughts and then it comes off in how you show up to your partner? There has to be a mutual understanding that I'm going to work on my part in being a good partner as a woman with PMDD. And then as a partner with someone who has PMDD, I'm going to make sure that I'm working to give grace and to not criticize you for where you fall short when you're in PMDD, and to understand that this is a safe place to really express what you're really feeling, what you're really thinking, because contempt comes from bottling up those shameful feelings that no one with PMDD really wants to talk about. I don't want to talk about how low I feel. I don't want to talk about how bad I feel about myself, how I criticize myself. Like, you don't want to talk about those things with someone who's going to further add on to that criticism. You want to talk to someone where you feel like it's safe, where if you say, hey, I feel messed up today, and they tell you that it's okay, and they remind you of who you are. They remind you of how wonderful you are when you're not in PMDD, and how you're not expected to be perfect, and how you're not expected to be all on all the time, because then you feel safe and there's nothing bottled up about the anger, and you can feel like you can get it out. And I feel like contempt literally comes from holding it in because you don't feel safe enough to let it out with your partner. So when you're talking about assigning meanings behind the stories that you tell yourself when you're in PMDD, I want to let you know that there is a way to get rid of that. But first, I'm going to go into talking with my partner about how do you feel from a partner's perspective of built up anger and things that you may have from months and months and months ago. And then now you're trying to move forward, but you still have anger inside over something that was said or something that was done. Do you feel like it's something where you have an understanding of the nature of someone in PMDD, or do you feel like they should just be able to kind of suck it up and still be the same way, whether they're in PMDD or not?
I mean, say the question again. There's a lot there.
The question is, do you feel like you have pent up anger or times of pent up anger for me not showing up as my best when I'm in PMDD? Or do you feel like I should just be capable of sucking it up and still giving you everything that you need, whether I'm in PMDD or not?
Man, personally, I take it one PMDD at a time. Like sometimes, it's easy to brush things off and sometimes it's not. And then it's like timing is everything, because sometimes we get to work through it and sometimes we don't. So it takes a lot of self-help to kind of go in my corner and try to brush it off by myself. And it can be a very lonely feeling to always try to, when that's not really your personality. Like my personality is, teamwork, let's do all these things. And then, there's a lot of times where it doesn't feel like a team, even though, in my mind, I feel like I'm being supportive. In her mind, she feel like, you're being supportive to me. And then you're good because you have a whole nother thing to worry about. And then I may not be good. So to answer your question, like it takes a lot of self-help, and like you really I have to be mentally strong. Because if I wasn't, like one or two things would happen. Contempt starts to build, resentment builds up, or I start to lose my own mind. And so it's like, man, we both can't be broke. We both can't be going through stuff. We both can't be, going through this. So like working on taking the high road, working on emotional intelligence, trying to let things go. I think that's the number one thing. Like I was reading something from the Buddhist religion. I think like her PMDD has really drawn me closer to Buddhism, because it's just all about being kind and forgiveness, and like I have to really believe those things. I have to believe that, it's all gonna be okay. And like sometimes it goes down to the minute, and sometimes, it takes longer, but it's like I'm working minute for minute, and I'm working day by day, working week by week, and understanding that it never goes away. So like having to make a choice to be forgiving or to be happy, or to, trying to take small opportunities to show affection or to communicate. Those things are all important, and it's a continuous cycle, like continuous. You can't, like, even, when you have bad days once a month, that that's us going through that together. And or sometimes, it's not together. It doesn't feel together. And it can get tough. It can get tough. And awareness is the key on that.
And I think that's really important. What Jamal pointed out is that everybody deals with PMDD differently when they're in it. Some want more attention from their partner, and some want to isolate for what makes them feel their best. What makes it not even their best, because you don't feel your best, but what makes you feel like this is my coping mechanism. And I know for us specifically, it's a little different because we're long distance. So we're in a long distance marriage. And so I'm used to being alone. I'm used to physically dealing with PMDD alone. It's not so much of we're bumping into each other and everything like that. But then when there are visits and times where we are together, and I'm used to doing my isolation of PMDD so that I don't negatively impact, anyone else, like that's a problem, because it's expected to be super communal, regardless, because that's the teamwork aspect that is expected. And so when we're talking about how to get rid of the contempt, because there is a way, okay? So when you notice, the first step is to notice that you have contempt going on in your PMDD relationship. And I believe that we all do, because I believe that no one fully addresses or even has time to fully address everything that goes on during PMDD as soon as we get out of it. Like, it's kind of like, I really don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it. I kind of want to move forward and let's go into a positive direction. You literally don't feel like that person anymore. So it's really hard to recreate and even talk about the situations that happen, because there's this disassociation that you get with PMDD where you don't feel the feelings as before. So if you try to talk about it and address it, it's almost like you can't do it when you're out of PMDD because you don't feel that same way. So when you're trying to communicate it to your partner and say, I feel this way when you said this, well, when you're not in PMDD anymore, you may not even feel that way. So this is why I always tell my clients, and I'm telling you, you have to talk about that while you're still in PMDD, because otherwise your PMDD partner is not going to get closure. So it's not necessarily for you. You have to allow your partner to get the closure that they need. And a way of doing that is to talk it out, and it has to be in the moment. So if you're going through PMDD rage, I'm not talking about in that moment. I'm talking about when you regulated yourself, even if you're feeling a little down and lethargic, that's fine. That's a way of you being like, okay, let's talk about what happened in a kind way. Because I know that communication with kindness, I say this to my partner all the time, speak kindly to me. Like when we're in PMDD, I can't deal with the normal, how couples argue and they yell and curse and all of these. Like I can't deal with that when I'm in PMDD. I cannot deal with elevated voices and cursing and those things, because those are triggers. But I do feel like if you speak kindly to your partner while you're in PMDD, you can get rid of the contempt and still talk about everything that's going on. So the first step is to, if you're taking notes, get your pen and paper out, speaking your truth and acknowledging it. In this case, the truth may be that you don't feel comfortable in your own skin. So when we're talking about the lies, as I spoke about earlier, the lies that we tell ourselves, when we say, oh, my partner's not attracted to me, right? Let's use that as an example. It's a common example that a lot of women with PMDD feel. They feel like because they're feeling so outside of their body, they're feeling bloated, they're feeling uncomfortable in their skin, they're assuming that their partner feels the same way. So in this case, let's address the truth. Has your partner specifically said, I don't like the way that you look? I'm not attracted to you. If they have not, this may be a case of the truth. So you're going to speak and acknowledge your truth, get to know your truth, because the PMDD stories, they're lies. The truth may be you may not feel comfortable in your own skin, in your own body, because of your own insecurities, and you're assuming that your partner feels the same way. So the truth may be that your partner loves and adores your body exactly how it is, and they have no issue with it. But because you feel that type of way about yourself, you feel bad about yourself, you're assuming that your partner feels and thinks the same thing. It's kind of like this underlying thing. I know my partner talked about the Buddhist religion, but if you think back to Adam and Eve with the Christian religion, when you look back in the Bible, they started to get ashamed of themselves because they know that they did something wrong. And so all of a sudden they were self-conscious as to how they were showing up to the world. And when you feel self-conscious within yourself, it portrays itself with how you show up to the world. What you're constantly doing cognitively is you're looking for validation to have the other person believe what you already believe in your mind. So if you believe that you are not attractive, if you believe that you're out of shape, if you believe that you're not at your best, what you're doing is you're looking for your partner to confirm that. So anything they say or do is triggering, because it's like, oh, my partner didn't hold my hand. They must not like me. They must not, think that I'm desirable. Oh, my partner didn't hug me as long as I expected. Oh, that must mean that my partner doesn't want to be close to me. My partner just would be better off by themselves. Like there's all these stories that we begin to tell ourselves because we feel a certain way, and all we need is the partners to get in agreement of that. So oftentimes we don't know the answers about our partners. So we make them up in our minds. We create these stories, and it may be a circumstance where you and your partner have been arguing for days. And then you're finally just at that point, and I know we've all been there, where you kind of just shut down and you're just coexisting. You're in the house together, but you're isolating yourself. You're upstairs, you're downstairs, you're in the kitchen, you're in the bathroom, like you're all around. And constantly when that's happening, there are thoughts going through your head because you're trying to get the answers that you don't get from your partner, and you make it up in your mind. And what happens is, when you show up to your partner, you're showing up to them as if those stories that you've been telling yourself is true. So even if your partner never said anything negatively about you, you're thinking that they did because you've allowed that thought to consistently roll in your mind to solidify those negative thoughts. And if you don't get to a point where you're just actually able to communicate with your partner, not with the stories that you're making up in your mind, but actually with your partner, and actually saying, this is how I'm feeling. I feel this emotion. Would you be interested in, and then you suggest a solution. So the first step is to express how you're really feeling so that you can get the truth of how your partner is really feeling. And a way that you can keep your partner from getting defensive is to avoid pointing fingers and using you statements. So you statements make your partner feel like they're doing something wrong. Instead of pointing the finger and saying, I don't like this because you do this, because you do that, because you do this, and you always do this, you always do that. Instead of pointing the finger out, I want you to focus on communicating how you feel when that situation happened. So I'm going to give you an example. When you went upstairs and went to bed, I felt this. Would you be interested if we maybe cuddled together before I went to sleep? So I'm literally pointing out issue with me and my partner right now. And I'm doing it purposely because I want to show you how there's a difference between making the person feel like they did something wrong and actually looking for a positive solution for the both of them. So I'm gonna bring my partner in a second, but me and my partner have different times that we go to sleep. So he goes to sleep early, I go to sleep late. Specifically when I'm like, I may stay up and watch Netflix. Right now I'm watching Ozark, so I'm on season 4. I thought I was on season 3, but then I started watching season 3 and I remembered that I remembered it, but it was so long ago. But anyway, I'm on season 4 of Ozark, so if you know, you know. And that makes bedtime, very kind of like, okay, if you're wanting to spend that quality time with your partner during bedtime, and you're not even going to sleep till like maybe like 12, well, not 12, maybe like 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and your partner goes to sleep at 8. And that becomes an issue because it's like day after day, like I'm expecting for us to go to bed, at the same time. But then if I went to bed at 8 o'clock, I would be staring at the ceiling, like going blink, blink. So in talking about this, in my mind, I'm thinking I don't want someone to suffer and kind of be staying up because I'm staying up. And then I want them to be able to get their rest, but then you also want to spend time with them. So you're feeling like that, like, okay, so what is the solution? So instead of making up a story, a PMDD story in my mind, I can say, okay, when you get upset with me because I don't go to bed with you at the same time, I feel, and then you insert the emotion here. So this is me. When you go upstairs and you expect me to go upstairs, or when you go to sleep and you expect me to go to sleep, or when I feel like I'm letting you down because I'm not sleeping when you're sleeping, I feel, and then you insert the emotion. So what I feel is a little stuck. I feel stuck. I feel like I can't win. I feel like I'm being forced to comply with something that like it's not out of a direct spite or like I don't want to lay with you, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that, but I feel like I need my personal time to kind of wind down, and that's different from the other person. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because it's not necessarily, like everyone knows, watching Ozark is not personal to your relationship. It just may be that's your nightly routine. So we have a morning routine that we both respect. He gets up way earlier than me. Not way earlier. He gets up around 3:34, and then I get up around, I would say, about 5. And we do our morning routines that take approximately the same amount of time. And it doesn't affect the other person because we both go to work, we both do our own thing. But then bedtime is like the evening routine. It's like a time frame where it actually does affect both of us because there's expectations there. So if I say to you, Jamil, and I say, hey, when I feel stuck because our evening routines don't align, would you be interested if we did something? Like, what would be the suggestion that you would have, or what is the feeling, the emotion that you're having in regards to our evening routine? Because what this is basically doing is addressing, it's not about when the person goes to sleep. It's not about Ozark. It's not about all of those things. It's about what emotion is in there that's being triggered from the differentiation in our evening routine.
Well, okay, so I guess if you're going to take the opportunity to address something that's current, I would say when the effort was shown on the front end and not acknowledged, I think that's where the issue becomes an issue, right? So it wasn't an issue when I was staying up and falling asleep on the couch just trying to be in your presence, and then not really getting the feeling like that was doing any good. So then saying, okay, well, I've tried not just once, but twice, you know, back to back, trying to show my efforts, but not really. This is where the expectation comes in, because I guess just because I show effort, I have to not expect one acknowledgement or to even feel like it made a difference, because that's where it becomes my problem then, right? So it's like, oh, I'm gonna show that I'll just stay here and fall asleep on the couch, And that way I'm showing effort, try to stay up later. I mean, hell, if we really want to be honest, I mean, the first night I stayed up till like 5-6 hours past my normal lay down and go to bed type time. So um the second night I didn't last 5 or 6 hours. I lasted like half of that. And then again, so it's the meter starts to run out and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm not getting anything in return, you know. It's like I'm investing but not getting any return. And then eventually you get depleted and it's like, okay, well, I'll just go to bed. Like, all right. And then it starts to fester. And that's where the issue comes. Because then I feel like, man, I always have to figure out, you know, how to adjust to this, to your PMDD, and you don't want to be around and you want to isolate. And then I'm putting forth effort, but it's not even acknowledged. So then I become the bad guy for going to bed early, right? So it always is seemingly a lose-lose for me, where it's like, when, like, what am I supposed to do, you know? And then even if it's not contempt with malice, um it becomes an issue too, right? So addressing that, I mean, if it's something that simple, which it always is, that develops into more and more and more things, then, you know, what do you do? And then it leaves me feeling like, well, I can't even address it because she's still in PMDD. And then when she comes out, she's made it very clear that we can't talk about it after either. So what do you do? What do I do? You know?
I don't think I've ever said to you that we can't discuss anything that we have in PMDD afterwards, because I haven't made it clear. When did I ever make it clear and say we can't discuss anything after PMDD? Because that's literally what we do every single month, is we talk about what happens in PMDD and how it affects us. So when did I make it clear that we can't talk about it?
So the precedent is set. So that, again, that's where the self-control comes in, self-evaluation. Like sometimes, or most times, if it's not clearly said, like, hey, let's address these things, coming out of PMDD, when you come out, you're good. But then I'm still there, but I'm still like scarred from, like, man, if I bring this up, like, it's an adjustment. You have to allow the other person to adjust too. It's not just all about you, it's about us, right? So
when you're talking about when I come out of PMDD and I'm good, aren't those times where we've talked about stuff that's going on in PMDD? Like, hey, this situation happened, like I'll go on a walk, or we're both going to walk, and we'll literally talk about what happened while I was in PMDD. I'm just confused about, when has there been a situation, unless you haven't brought it up, that we haven't talked about any issue that we've had, any conflict that has happened, where we haven't literally addressed both sides again and again and said, hey, this is what happened, and let's talk about this.
no, you've never not said. I mean, it wasn't like, we do typically discuss things, right? Or it's not like a no, this is mandatory, but there's still, what I'm addressing is the process on my side, right? So just because you snap out of it tomorrow morning, it might not be as easy for me to snap out of it. And then again, trying to make sure that, well, we don't want to do any damage. And so speaking out of anger, or speaking out of whatever that could be, now becomes something that maybe I'm not ready for. Or, it's a constant evaluation of what's right, what's wrong. I can honestly say a lot of times the fear that you instill, or that I allow to be instilled in myself during the PMDD, carries on past PMDD. And so sometimes it's like, man, Like, we just went through all that. Like, I don't even got the energy to address this. Like, just let it go, you know? And then that's where I I can see, you know, just trend analysis. I can see where a lot of those things can come up in future fights or disagreements. I'll say, I'm not gonna say fight because we don't fight, but like, I can see how they start to pile up and then all come out at once. Because just like you don't have the energy to fight during PMDD, sometimes I'm not ready to fight after right away.
And I think that's when we're going into the first thing is, regardless of how hard it is, how difficult it is, how uncomfortable it is, you need to openly express. Because if not, that's where the contempt is, the built up. And the thing with contempt is there's never a good time. There's never a right time. There's never going to be, because you don't want to do it when everything's going well, and you don't want to do it when everything's going bad. So essentially, you just need to get in a habit of openly expressing how you feel. And I think if we develop better, and I'm going to do another episode on this, about dealing with conflict within PMDD without the rage, without the anger, then there will be there's such an aversion to wanting to talk about something or have an argument or agreement, because it's like, as soon as you start talking about something that you're not agreeing with, you're like, I don't want to argue with you. And it's like, we're creating this culture of not being able to openly express how we're feeling and not being in agreement without it becoming an argument. So if you constantly think that every single time you don't agree with each other, that it's turning into an argument, you're going to avoid it. So the whole purpose of this, to get rid of the contempt, is to talk about how you're feeling openly, but you feel like if the other person feels differently, then that's quote unquote a disagreement. So I'm going to avoid a disagreement. Then you're essentially avoiding the thing that's going to help the contempt to go away. You're avoiding expressing how you're truly feeling because you think it's going to turn into something, whether it does or not. And when we tell ourselves that story in our mind, that if I bring up how I'm feeling, this is what my partner is going to say. This is where the PMDD stories come from, the PMDD partner side. They can assume that you're going to feel a certain way, you're going to say a certain thing, and it's going to trigger a certain thing. And so they keep it in. And that's where the contentment really is that my partner was just talking about. There's a fear that happens from when I've been in PMDD and when I've said certain things that you think, oh, okay, every single time we talk about something, this is going to be the outcome. That can cause a partner to not want to open up, to want to shut down, to want to brush things off. And when I say brush things off, I don't mean brush it off because it doesn't bother them. Brush it off and not address it. But it's still there. It's still money in the bank. And it's still, whenever there's a disagreement or an argument, it's going to pop back up and be like, oh, it's my turn. It's my turn to say how I'm really feeling. And then now you're expressing your feelings in a negative environment. You're expressing your feelings once you're emotionally triggered and you're angry. And that's not the time to bring up productive feelings that are actually valid, because now the other person's not going to receive them because they're being thrown at them in a negative connotation, because you're angry and you're saying, you didn't do this and you didn't do that and you didn't do using all those you statements. And when you're using those you statements, you're really not getting to the other person, because now it's like they put their guard up and they're being defensive. And you're not getting to the bottom of any issue because you're constantly defending your character, you're defending who you are. Because when you have PMDD, that's one of the worst things that you can do, is to associate those negative thoughts that you have about their actions and say, this is who you are, this is what you do. And a lot of times I've told my clients, PMDD is not you, it's not who you are. It's not what you do. These are reactions that you may have to PMDD, but it doesn't define you. So when someone's taking your actions and they're saying you are this and you're doing this, it's like, no, like you constantly feel like you have to defend yourself. So I think the first step is to really get to a safe place where you feel like you can say and not feel like you have to hold it in. You can say and express how you're feeling, regardless of how ugly it is. It's kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off. It's never cute. It's never, it's a little bit painful, but once it's off, it's off. And I believe that it literally makes like both people, both PMDD partners feel better to say, okay, at least I know what my partner's really thinking. You don't want a representative to be sitting in front of you where you're going out to dinner or you're going to do normal things or you're going to the store and you're thinking that your partner's fine, and then inside they're giving you the side eye and they're suffering and they're hurting and they're angry and they're feeling all these emotions, but you don't know about it. So that's why it's called an intimate relationship, because you need to be intimate. This is not a surface level relationship where you can keep everything cute, like it's shown like in the, in the public, and it's like, oh, Edward's just supposed to smile and, hold hands and take smiling pictures all the time. But it's like, it's not always like that. And anybody who's in an intimate relationship knows that. And it's okay. It's okay to tell your partner the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what you signed up for. That's what a relationship is. And so the next step is to build a culture of appreciation. So what my partner was talking about earlier was saying that he had stayed on the couch for 2 days straight and he felt like he wasn't getting any gratification from that. He wasn't getting any appreciation from me for sitting on the couch for 2 days and trying just to be close to me and just saying, oh, that was really nice of you. I think a big part about getting appreciation from your partner, whether it's the woman in PMDD or the partner, is expressing, again, it kind of goes into the first one, which is expression of how you're feeling and giving the intent and the meaning behind the action. Because honestly, when he was laying on the couch, sitting there, sleeping, snoring, all of the things, I had no idea, like, I'm not aware that that was supposed to be for me. I don't understand how that was supposed to be for me, because we weren't talking or interacting. He was just there. And I just thought he didn't want to go upstairs. So I think sometimes we do a lot of things that we expect our partner to be grateful for, but we haven't expressed the intent behind it. Like, hey, babe, I'm laying here on the couch so that I can be close to you, or I'm laying on the couch, like, I just want to be near you. If you express yourself, like the first one says, and let me know the intent, the meaning behind it, I can probably do the second part, which is appreciate it and be like, oh, that's why. But if I don't know the reasoning behind your actions and then you get upset because I'm not giving you appreciation for something that I didn't even know you were doing, then it's kind of like, okay, you set the expectations for what you clearly identify. So if I'm going to go to the store and I want to buy my partner something from the store, I'm not going to be like, okay, I'm going to the store, and then I bring them something back. Like, I'm going to say, hey, babe, I'm going to the store to get you an energy drink. So now when I come back from the store, my partner knows that my sole reason for going to the store was to get them an energy drink. It's not like my partner could misunderstand and be like, oh, she just needed to go to the store. Like if I picked up some toothpaste too, and then my partner could say, oh, well, she went to the store because she had to go get toothpaste. And while she was in line, she got me the energy drink. It's like, no, I did this for you. And I think it's so important for us as partners with people who have PMDD is express why you're doing the things that you're doing in order to get the gratification that you actually want, in order to get the affection behind it that you want. Say, hey, I'm doing this for you. And I feel like so many times there's this expectation that we're supposed to read each other's mind and say, oh, I'm supposed to know that you're doing this for this reason. I'm supposed to know because I know you, so I know. And what, honestly, we don't know everything. We don't know everything, and that's okay. But again, it goes back to creating that safe space of expressing yourself to your partner and allowing them to express themselves. And a good part of that is to try not to get dismissive or offensive or belittle your partner or get defensive when they say something that you don't like. I understand that sometimes when we openly express ourselves, we may say something that criticizes the partner in a way that's honest. Like, hey, you meant to do this for me, but I needed this. Like, you're trying to give me attention and I need space. That may hurt. That may hurt to think that the best thing that you can do for me right now, especially for PMDD partners, is to give me some space. Like, I would actually appreciate getting space versus getting a lot of attention and expectations of being a certain way that I'm not right now. So I'm talking to my partner about that because I know that's a big thing for us is when we are physically together or even over the phone when I'm in PMDD is I don't need a lot of attention and affirmations and telling me all of these things because I kind of know it, but I just need space. And for a partner that's trying to connect, that's really hard to hear because there's all these insecurities behind that. And it's kind of like, well, why don't you want attention from me? Why don't you want affection from me? Why don't you want this and this and this? And it's like, it's not that I don't want that as a whole. It's like at this time for what I'm going through right now, this is actually what I need, and what I need is space.
Yeah, it all sounds all easy, right? And then, but it didn't become an issue until the space was given, and then it's like, oh, well, now we're sleeping apart. Now that's an issue. So, what do you do? What is the answer? Like, you you can't communicate it because you're afraid that the response is going to be, well, I don't need you to be here. Okay, cool. So I guess again, it always comes full circle, and it's me that has to put in the work, constantly has to say, all right, well, just trust, just be kind, just be forgiving, don't have expectations during PMDD or at all, period. And then, really that's what my goal is like to really just try not to care anymore about anything, because it'll continue to just put me in a place where it's like, man, I can't communicate that this is what I'm doing. And then when I do, that could be a problem, so it's a constant battle. And it's not like that every time, right? So there is, and I'm giving mad credit, like there's a lot of times that we've gone through PMDD where we didn't have, like, we were able to communicate those things. So it's like it's not always there. But when it is, it can become a much bigger problem. So that's the problem that needs to be addressed. It's a constant cycle, just like it is for you. It's a constant cycle for me, and then it's a cycle for us as a team. So just stay positive, like that's really what it comes down to, is just stay positive. And when it's time to go in my corner, like just go in my corner. And our situation is very unique too, because like we live apart, not by choice, because the military makes us be apart. So every moment is precious, physically, or when we're physical and when we're not. uh so it's like, it's a very unique situation, which is probably one of the worst situations that I would say you can have, one of the worst that you can have, while building and sustaining a marriage, with PMDD, because it again, it's a constant cycle. Like, it's not always bad, but it could be, and it's not always good, but it could be, right? So it just takes a lot of effort on both sides. And as I've said in previous episodes, like, the most important thing is to just acknowledge, like, self-evaluate. If the tables were turned and the switch was always going on and off, right? Having an understanding for that as well. So, like, We're both trying to be understood. We're both trying to be felt. We're both trying to be heard. We're both trying to accomplish the same. We have the same goal, which is to be happy and be in love. And, we have the same goal. So it just takes a lot of maturity and a lot of emotional intelligence and a lot of self-work. And that's really what this all comes down to. So I say for like the men, like, just don't give up, and be aware, because next month I could say something like, hey, I'm spending this time with you, but if it's at the wrong time in the wrong place, like, then the fear is that that's going to turn, right? That could get turned. Or like I said, just take it and be able to brush it off. That's one of my biggest failures and one of my biggest successes. Like, I don't, it's not always easy to brush it off. And it's not always not easy to brush it off. It just depends on the situation. Again, as a man, I'm human too, right? We're human. And if I'm going through, if I have my own stresses, and you're having your stresses, and then they clash sometimes, and that's where sometimes it can be even more difficult on top of the difficulty. You're just adding more challenges. So it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not for weak-minded people. You really got to want to be there and be able to talk through some of the things, because sometimes sometimes the communication does actually set forth, and it becomes very valuable. So I like Deandra's point on saying, hey, let's communicate those things. Let's talk, and don't be afraid to talk. I would say that's a huge challenge, is that it's like a whole bunch of bullets flying through the air, and you're just scared that one of them's going to hit you. So you just say, just keep my head down and try to keep it moving. And that can become a problem when you do that as well.
So when we're talking about contempt, to conclude what it is that you need to do, it is that you have to, number one, express how you're feeling and know that it may be hard sometimes, but it's necessary. You need to appreciate your partner for what it is that they are doing, and make sure for the partners that you're giving the meaning behind the things that you're doing in order to get the appreciation. So if you're doing something specifically for your PMDD partner, make sure you're letting them know what you're doing and why, the outcome that you're thinking of getting. Because I know a lot of times we think that, oh, I want to do certain things in order to make the situation better, and you feel some type of way about it not being received that way. Let your partner know. Say, hey, I'm doing this to make your life better. So that sometimes when we have this disassociation and we have foggy brain and we're fatigued and we have all these things, we don't notice what it is that you're doing. So if it's not that we're purposely failing to appreciate what it is that you're doing, we just don't know, because we're in our own heads with everything that we're going through. And then also listen with compassion. Don't criticize your partner. Don't use those you statements, right? Where you're saying you're doing this and you're doing that, because the other person is just going to just try to defend themselves. So if you and your partner are still struggling to communicate without contempt, I strongly suggest that you hire a PMDD relationship expert such as myself that is specific to PMDD, because it's one thing to use relationship tools that are standardized. We've all heard, the treat kindly and do these things that are normal for individuals that don't have PMDD. But what makes it so hard is that there's no PMDD specific tools. And that's why I created my business. And that's why I'm here to give you the tools that are PMDD specific, to have these sessions and not just have the session and then we're done, but to actually give you an ebook following your session, so that anytime you and your PMDD partners start to have these stories and this contempt and this stress that's in your relationship that's ultimately making your symptoms worse, because I know that we're all aware that when you have these kind of disagreements and contempt and everything built up, your symptoms become worse. You can use these PMDD relationship techniques to turn your relationship around that very same day. And your symptoms will subside because there'll be less stress there. Your cortisol levels will be lower. And I truly believe that having PMDD in an intimate relationship is one of the hardest things in the world to endure without help. And that's why I'm here to ensure that we all get the supportive relationship that we desire and deserve. So if you need help, reach out to me on Instagram at inlovewithpmdd or inlovewithpmdd.com on my website, or even www.inlovewithpmdd@gmail. You can send me an email there, but just reach out to me to have a session to make sure that you're provided with the PMDD specific relationship tools that is going to help you to have the relationship that you desire, you and your partner, and that you deserve, because we are not supposed to do this alone. You got this.